Good morning. My name is Aaron. I am the Associate Director of our Next Gen Ministries here at Ridge Church. It is my honor to bring the word today, and today we'll be reading from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 8. I want you to picture with me a wedding, a Western Canadian wedding. Picture it. You have the ceremony, you have the reception. Realistically, we could just get rid of the ceremony and just have the party. Just have the reception, right? Let's celebrate the love between these two people. Let's have a bunch of food. Let's listen to good music. Get rid of all the boring speeches and keep all of the emotional ones that make us cry and all the incredibly funny ones, and get rid of all the attempted funny ones. But to do so would actually be to gut the ceremony and gut something that's actually very essential to the wedding, right? The vows. The vows are an incredibly key part of the wedding and the marriage process. Traditionally, these vows have been for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others till death do us part. Might be some more in there. Typically, some couples nowadays will add a couple extra vows or of their own. Wouldn't it be weird if we just were okay with people not actually living up to their vows once they got married? I'm going to be with you whether you're sick or whether you're healthy. Well, half this room would probably not be together with their spouse anymore because half of you were sick in the last month because some kind of cold was going around that took people out. Right? Like it wouldn't make sense for, oh, you got sick. Okay, we're done. That wouldn't track, that wouldn't make any sense to us. The same premise of the wedding, where you expect that people will actually follow their vows and live up to their vows, is the same premise of what's happening in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, if you do not know, is actually the fifth book of the Bible. It's one of the biggest ones. It's part of what's called the Pentateuch, or as our Jewish brothers and sisters would say, part of the Torah. It's what's called the Law of Moses. And the book of Deuteronomy comes in as the fifth book, and is called Deuteronomy, which breaks down to mean second law, because it is a summary of the law that was given to the Israelites by God through Moses in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. It is a second telling. It is a second law. It is a summary. So the context behind this is that this is the second generation of Israel receiving the law. The first generation was the generation that God rescued out of slavery in Egypt and actually led out of slavery and oppression. This second generation were maybe just kids, maybe not even born yet, but this is the second generation. They need that retelling of the law. You see, God had been promising the people of Israel for a long time that He will bring them to a promised land. He will bring them to a place that will be called their land, and they will build their homes and live with God and with each other there. The second generation is about to go into and claim that land. They are about to go into the promise of God. They are about to enter a new stage of life from wandering in the wilderness into a promised land. And the reason they are doing this is this retelling of the law is a second telling of the law. It is a ceremony of the renewal of the vows. It is a reading of the vows that is being made between God and Israel. The call for the book of Deuteronomy is to remain faithful to those. As they enter into this new stage of life, to actually be faithful to what God has called them to do and called them to be. Now, if I was to hazard a guess, I would say most of us have not read the book of Deuteronomy too often. There might be a couple really enthusiastic people about Old Testament stuff, which, hey, we like it. But most of us probably haven't read it, because if we read a Bible in a year, we tend to go through the first 4 books and then reach the 5th book, and we say, again, more of the same law? Yes, more of the same law. But I believe that Deuteronomy can actually change the course of Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows and Mission, that it can actually change the course of your life. You see, Israel had a line of kings after they did accomplish taking over their land, and as they were established, and they set up a line of kings. And what happened is those kings would either lead them from God, away from God, or lead them to God. He would benefit the relationship or would lead them away. And amidst this season of being far away from God, worshiping other idols from other nations around them, and adopting other practices, in the midst of this, an 8-year-old becomes king. His name was Josiah. And when Josiah turned 26, he started rebuilding the temple to God and discovered in it what's called the Book of Law. He reads the Book of Law and immediately starts turning the country back to God. Starts going around and breaking down idols, breaking down altars to gods that were not the true God, not the living God of the Bible. Completely turns the nation around. It says, we will go back to worshiping God. At the end of his life, the book of Kings, 2 Kings, writes this about Josiah. It says, neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him who turned to the Lord as he did, with all of his heart, with all of his soul, and with all of his strength, in accordance with all the law of Moses. I believe that Deuteronomy can actually shape our lives. That its call to faithfulness and to loving God can actually shift our lives, your life, your family's life, and the lives of the people in Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, Mission, and beyond. Also, Jesus quoted it the most, which is kind of cool. Let's get into it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This first word here is actually the word Shema. It's a Hebrew word. And basically what it means is listen, pay attention, obey. Think about like a kid. You tell them, don't run into the street. Like, wait for me, hold my hand, that kind of thing. You don't expect your kid to just listen and then go, okay, cool, I'm going to do whatever. When you tell your kids to listen, or your nieces and nephews or whatever it may be, you actually expect them to listen, right? When your boss says, hey, I need you to go clean up this mess, you go, okay, great, and then go back to what you're doing. No, you actually listen and then carry out. Listen and obey. That is the word and what the word means. But there's two ways to kind of translate the rest of that. The Lord our God, the Lord is one, is the first option. As we read, many of your Bibles will have that, and that's a perfectly legit translation. The second option is something along the lines of the Lord our God, the Lord our alone. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Israel lived in what's called a polytheistic society, where the nations around them, each of them had multiple gods. Think the ancient Romans, think the ancient Grecians, the ancient Greeks. Think about them. There's Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, like all of these different gods. The ancient Egyptians, Ra, Osiris, Anubis, the ancient Canaanites, which is in the similar region of where Israel was and is. You have Asherah and Baal, so on and so forth. The ancient Babylonians, Tiamat, Ishtar, Marduk, so on and so forth. There were gods for everything and everyone. Whatever you could picture, there was a god that oversaw it or lived it. And what I think this sentence means is it's saying there is one God. That we, Israelites, we worship one God. We're not going to a different God over here for agriculture. We're not going to a different God over here for our wars. We're not going over here to have kids. Like, we're not doing that. We have one God. We worship one God. Our loyalty and all of our worship and praise and adoration and love goes to one God. Rich Church, my first question today for you is, what are your values and priorities How did you live them out in 2023? And from that, would you actually be able to say that you worshiped one God? That Jesus was actually above every other priority in your life? Do you actually worship God alone? If you're checking out Christianity, my question is a little bit different for you. Why not worship God alone? Why not put the majority and the main focus of your life into God, into Jesus? Why not? Maybe it's hurt. Maybe it's some philosophy you have. Maybe it's a bad experience with a Christian or with a church. What is it? Think about it. Deuteronomy continues. And you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. I want to go back to that marriage analogy for a second. Where is a good spouse found? Is it found in saying the vows on the wedding day, in the ceremony, in the reception? No. Is a good spouse found on the honeymoon? No. I would argue that a good spouse isn't even found in the dating or engagement period. And the reason I say that is because I would say that a good spouse actually is the one who lives out their vows that they made on their wedding day in the everyday life. A good spouse is someone who actually shows their vows each and every day. And I'm going to stop the analogy there because I don't want to cause anyone to have guilt, but I want to share a point. And I think the same thing can be said about our love for sports. What's the proof that you like football? What's the proof that you like soccer? I myself am a big fan of Formula One. The proof of that is that I'm watching every race. I'm keeping tabs every day of, oh, did this happen? Did this happen? Oh, this team brought upgrades. This team didn't. This car will go faster than this car in the corners, but not the other way around. Whatever it is, I nerd out on it. Don't judge me. But it showed in our everyday. What we love and what we focus our life around actually shows us what we love in our everyday life. So how do you live your life? How do you live every day? Not coming to church, not Sundays, not coming to youth group, not coming to community group. How about the rest of your life? Would it attest to your love for God, your proclaimed love for God? That you say, when you say you love God, could people actually look at your life and say, yeah, I think you do? If I was to ask the question, what do you think loving God looks like in your everyday life? If I was to go around with a microphone, I think we'd get a lot of answers that say something along the lines of read your Bible, go to church, pray, worship, listen to worship music in the car, stop listening to secular music, don't swear, right? I think we get a lot of those things, and I cannot affirm that enough. I think, yes, that is a huge part of what it means to love God, to worship Him, to adore Him. But I have an additional idea that kind of ties in with that. And again, I want to affirm everything that I just said. We probably don't read our Bible enough. We probably don't pray enough, and when we do pray, we probably don't pray as we should pray. That's most likely the reality. You probably don't worship enough. You probably don't sing songs of praise about who God is. Your gratitude in your everyday life. Do we do that? But what I want to propose is something along the lines of how you interact with people around you is actually a way to love God. There was an ancient people in the same region as ancient Israel. They were called the Hittites. They fought a couple times. But the Hittites were a powerful nation, and they had what's called a Caesarean treaty. The Hittite-Caesarean treaty. And the reason I mention that is because Deuteronomy actually follows the same structure as this treaty. It starts with the preamble, where the parties involved, which in Israel's case is the Lord and the people, the historical prologue. Let's examine this relationship, right? And it recruits Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, pulling them out of Egypt, and so on and so forth. Then it goes into the stipulations, and the stipulations of the relationship between these two is actually the Ten Commandments. It's the Ten Commandments, and then it goes into a section of details of the stipulations, which is then further expanding of the commandments and what it looks like. Then it goes into blessings and curses and oaths and witnesses. Tim Keller writes this about the literary structure of Deuteronomy and the treaty. He says this: the purpose of the treaty was to dictate and to show the smaller nation how to have a good relationship with the more powerful nation. The small nation to the big nation. Therefore, Deuteronomy is an extraordinarily sophisticated way of saying, no, the law of God is there in order to have a love relationship to God and also a witness to the nations, not as a form of salvation. Okay, let's unpack that. What he's saying is that the law, the stipulations in the treaty, in the contract, is actually not about saving people. It's actually about cultivating a relationship with God. The Ten Commandments are about cultivating your relationship with God. Which, if we take it at that, means, let's just look at the Ten Commandments real quick. The first couple are all God-focused. You shall have no other gods before me, no graven images, don't make idols, don't take the Lord's name in vain. And then you could argue both ways that the honoring the Sabbath day is towards God and social as it involves rest. But the rest of them are all socially oriented. They're all relationally oriented. Honor your father and mother. Do not commit murder. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not covet your neighbor's possessions. But do you see my point? Half, if not just over half, of the Ten Commandments are socially related, which means, if you factor in what Tim Keller wrote and said about the treaty structure of Deuteronomy, is that to honor the Ten Commandments, to not commit murder, to not bear false witness, to not covet, to not cheat, do not murder, living those out socially is how you love God. Your everyday life, your social life, is how you honor and love God. Jesus says something similar in one of the Gospels. He's asked the question, what's the most important commandment? To love your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, strength. Varies in translations. And then the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. How you interact with the people around you, how you live your everyday life, reflects and shows if you love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your strength. Whether you love Jesus with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength. And I got to be honest, I think that we as Ridge Church actually do a pretty good job of this. I think corporately we do. We care for the people around us. We care for the people who are in this neighborhood, specifically through our partners. We support them. We create a space and a partnership for the hub, which is just out there. We partner with Youth Unlimited to reach the schools, right? We partner with the hospital foundation. We partner with different people. We run our youth ministry, our seniors ministry. We run different things, and we try and do our best as the organization, as the collective of Ridge Church, to love the people around us. But we've also heard a lot of stories, or a couple key stories that stand out, of how some of you have been caring for your neighbors. How you wait in lines with them to make sure they can get home, to buy groceries for each other, The way that you have loved one another in 2023 has shown to us as staff and shown to the people around us in the city and shown to God how you love him. And that has to be an encouragement to you. In my own life, there was a youth pastors conference in Vancouver at the end of October. And as per Vancouver, you have to move your parking, right? Because you park on the street, and it's like 2-hour parking. I'm like, but if I pay for it, can I not park there longer? That would be nice. No. So I had to move my car, and I found a parking lot that I could stay more than 2 hours in, which was great. Still pretty close to the venue. And I went and I parked there, and I witnessed some person who he did not know how to drive or reverse his truck, and he scraped up the side of a Honda Civic. And so as I parked my car afterwards, he drove off, unfortunately, there was a lady standing there. I was like, hey, is this your car? She didn't seem to notice that it had been dented and scraped and whatnot. And she said, yeah, it is. Why? And I go, well, actually, you just got hit in an accident. And it just broke down. It's just my daughter's car. It was just the doctors getting checked up on. And we moved here from like Salmon Arm and blah, 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 blah. And this lady just started telling me stories. And I'm like, I have a conference to get back to. I'm missing a session on prayer. Like, I got to learn. Like, we're paid for this. It's my financially stable side saying. But what ended up happening is that we chatted, and I told her, like, yeah, I'm at this youth pastors conference. And I did actually end up praying for her. I was like, hey, like, I know I'm a pastor, but like, can I actually pray for you? She's like, yeah, absolutely, please. So I prayed for her, and I prayed for her daughter, and whatever she was seeing the doctors about, I don't know, but like, just met her there in the moment. Actually pause the thing that I had to run around and go to and blah, 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 and go there. And like I said, I can't remember if I knew this at the time or not, but when I walked back in, it was a session on prayer. And I missed most of it because I was praying with someone. But the irony, I love it. Will you continue to do those kind of things in 2024, Bridge Church? Will you continue to love the people around you, to be generous, to be kind, loving, joyful? Will you have self-control, gentleness, kindness? Because how you live that out in the everyday life will reflect how you love God with all of your heart, soul, and strength. Verse 6. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts, and press them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. And I'm not going to lie, it sounds a lot like a classic Christian mom. Live, laugh, love. But the point is that we need the reminders. When you're having a hard day at work, you need that reminder, hey, pray for them. Love on them. Do something kind. The way that you love the people around you, especially in the hardest moments, to love them, to care for them, to be kind to them, to be patient with them. That reflects God. That shows your love for God. It reflects God to them at the same time. And honestly, I could keep going with examples and with things, but I want to highlight Matthew 5 and Romans 12, and I'm not going to get into them, but those two chapters, I think, really get into the heart of it and what it could look like. What it could look like to not return evil for evil, but actually conquer evil with good. What it looks like to actually leave the altar and go and be remedied with a friend. The standard of contact. And again, I think we're doing great at this as a church. Some of us could do better. But can we all do better? I know for myself I can. But how can you love the people around you more? Not just to be nice and to be kind, but how can you love the people around you to love God? We reshape that in our minds. How can you love the people around you to love God with all of your heart, soul, and strength? Living that way means that every day of our lives actually matters. There's value in each and every mundane thing we do, from grocery shopping to doing laundry. There's something about it that actually matters. But with that can also come a lot of pressure. Every day matters. If I don't get this right, I screwed up. Darrell Johnson, in his book on the Ten Commandments, he writes this: God's commandments are spoken after God's work of redemption. That is, the law comes after grace. Keeping the law is therefore not the means for winning God's favor. Keeping the commandments, living our lives in a way that is loving and kind and honors God. It's not a way to gain God's favor. Same with reading our Bible, with praying, with whatever other way, coming to church, going to youth group, going to community group, whatever it is, it's not a way of gaining God's favor. You've already been saved. You already have access to the saving work of Jesus Christ, the redeeming work, the forgiveness, the love, the grace, the mercy. All of it is already accessible. You don't need to do anything to get it. It is actually something that is open to anyone and everyone. And if you are a believer, if you have come under the blood of Jesus on the cross, guess what? Living out the commandments is not the way that you are saved, and nor is it the way that you have more benefit and more love, more grace from God. It's not a transaction. It's just the way that you show God how you love him. It's the point of grace. You can't earn it. Despite everything that has happened this year, you are loved, you are forgiven, you have grace and mercy upon you. Every hurtful word, every relationship that broke because of you, every hurtful thing and painful thing that happened to you because of someone else, you are still loved and valued by God and by Jesus, all the same. So as we go into 2024, as we end 2023 today, my question that I will leave you with is this: will you continue to love God with all of your heart, soul, and strength in 2024, no matter what comes at you? Will you continue to love the people around you, no matter what comes at you? In the darkest and most painful moments where you feel so alone and isolated in the coming year, will you continue to be faithful? Will you continue to remind yourself, I will love my God? And in the good things. I feel like we often, like from the pulpit and when we call for prayer, like I feel like we often just like highlight the bad things in our life. But when good things happen, when there's life and light and goodness, will you continue to love God and not be distracted by the good things in your life? Will you continue to recognize that he is God alone, not the thing and not you for grabbing the thing? We pray and we'll end. Jesus, thank you for today. Thank you for your call to be faithful and to love you with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with all of our strength. God, I pray that you would continue to stir that passion and love for you, that we would continue to love the people around us in the everyday stuff of life, that you would continue to be gracious to us. We thank you for your grace. That Jesus, you came, you lived, you were born, you lived, you died, and you were resurrected. Thank you, and may we turn our hearts to you each and every day. Amen.
Well, hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm the lead pastor here at Ridge Church. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that it was just a great opportunity for you to connect and learn more about following God and knowing Jesus. And we just want to invite you to continue to engage with us here. But we also believe that one of the best ways to follow Jesus is in the context of community. And so let me just take a quick moment and tell you what Ridge Church is all about. We're really about three things. The first thing is about Jesus. Above all, Jesus is the reason that we exist. Our goal, our desire is that you would know Jesus and be known by Jesus, and that He would change and transform your life. The second, we believe that community is really important. You know, in a world with so many digital connections and so few genuine connections, we believe that one of the best ways to live life, one of the most healthy ways, and certainly one of the ways to follow Jesus best is in the context of community. And so regardless of what stage of life you're in or where you're at in your spiritual journey, we want to invite you to come and to join us and to walk with a few others, to be known by them and to know them as we follow Jesus together. And then thirdly, we're about city. And by that we mean that we want to be a place and a people who love our city, who love our neighbors and serve them and care for them and just walk alongside of them so that our city flourishes. And we want to be known by our city as a group of people, as a church that offers hope and life and care and love to anyone who's looking for that kind of thing. So that's really what we're all about: Jesus, community, and city. And we'd love to have you join us. If you want to know more, just fire off an email to hello@ridgechurch.ca and someone will get back to you. Or better yet, just come by for a service, 10:30 Sunday mornings. We look forward to seeing you soon.